Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. This is the public scoping meeting for the Upper Price River Watershed Plan-EIS. I know it's a mouthful. So EIS stands for Environmental Impact Statement. And we want to welcome you and thank you so much for taking the time to join us online this evening to learn about this important study. My name is Mendy Magistro, and I am part of the public involvement team. We want to make sure you know this meeting is being recorded. We will post the recording on our website as soon as we're able to get that packaged and uploaded, most likely, tomorrow afternoon. So be looking for that if you need to. Also, the presentation slides that you will see tonight will also be available to view on our website tomorrow. So if you haven't already, go ahead and take some time this evening to visit our website and complete the public meeting sign-in form. It's just below the link you clicked to join the meeting. And we're hearing from people submitting that form. Just go ahead and enter your email. So don't worry about your phone number. Just go ahead and enter your email and that should work to submit it that way, your name and email. So that just helps us to document attendance and provide updates throughout the study. So tonight we'll begin with a presentation and then we will transition to a Q&A session where our team members will answer questions live. So you won't be able to speak or turn on video capabilities during the webinar. However, we do encourage you to submit written questions at any time during the meeting using the Q&A feature. So let me give you a quick tutorial on that. We do have staff monitoring the questions. Team representatives will provide written answers to some of the more general questions. And then after the presentation, like I said, we'll have study representatives answering those questions live. So those of you receiving written responses, you'll see the following names: Peter Still, Duke Richardson, Ryan Pitts, and Bo Hunter. So if you go ahead and go to the bottom of your screen, mine won't show, but if you kind of hover over the bottom area, a panel should appear. Go ahead and click on this Q&A button. And then a new window will pop up and you can submit your questions there. And then as other people are submitting their questions, if you have that same question, click on this thumbs up button. That just helps our team know how common a question is, and then we can kind of prioritize in answering those questions. We just want you to keep in mind that questions submitted using the Q&A feature will be visible to everyone viewing this meeting. So we just want to make sure all comments submitted are respectful. Any comments that use foul language or that are inappropriate or disrespectful will be removed. Okay. All right. Our goal tonight, we want to inform you about the study and NEPA process. We want to invite you to participate in the process and encourage you to provide input on water resource needs and environmental resources. Okay. So we have representatives from our study team that will be presenting tonight, answering questions and moderating the Q&A. We have representatives from Price City. We have the mayor and Miles Nelson with Public Works. And then we have representatives from NRCS, and we'll kind of explain who they are in the presentation, Derek and Norm. And then we have representatives from our public involvement team and our environmental team, Ryan Pitts and Bo Hunter. We will hear a few remarks from Price City Mayor Michael Corianos, and then he will turn the time over to Stan Jorgensen, our consultant project manager. Okay, Mayor Corianos, the time is yours.
Well, I'd just like to welcome everyone here for our scoping meeting tonight. It's with honor and humble. I'm very humbled to be here representing the council and myself, but also the citizens of our community in this process. I'm very appreciative of the NRCS to help us in this process, to make sure that we as a community are coming together and we're listening, and everybody is coming together to voice their concerns so that we can develop a resource for our future. So with that, I am very honored to be here. Thank you for participating and being part of this. If you know that someone missed this, like a friend or someone that is that wants to find out more about this, let them know of this website. And also, you know, at the county courthouse and also at Price City Hall, there's ways of communicating and voicing their concerns, but we are trying to be transparent. Everybody's voice is important to us in this process, and so we're very thankful for this. And so I'll turn the time over to Stan Jorgensen.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We are all happy and excited to be here tonight. I am going to go through just a few slides to give everybody some basic background about the study. As was mentioned earlier, the NRCS, or Natural Resources Conservation Service, they are the lead federal agency for this study. Back in, I guess it was August 1954, we enacted the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Act. And this study is being conducted as part of the PL 566 Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Program. This program provides technical and financial assistance to various types of project sponsors. Could be for a state or local government, like a city, Price City, or even for tribes. The program assists with the planning and the implementation of various types of authorized projects. Some examples of types of projects are flood prevention, damage reduction, developing rural water supplies, erosion and sediment control, fish and wildlife habitat enhancement, and even increasing recreational opportunities. Those are all approved uses or purposes for this PL 566 program. Next slide, please, Mindy. Water is a basic human need. We all need water. We use water to drink, to cook, to grow crops, to take care of animals. Here on this slide, we've shown kind of 5, I guess, categories of water usage that we are going to be evaluating. Culinary use, irrigation, municipal uses, agriculture, and industrial. Next slide, please. Just to give kind of more to an overview, mentioned that the NRCS, they are the lead federal agency as in charge of this study. We will have other agencies involved as well. In fact, we did a meeting similar to this one last week to involve agencies, and we had good attendance there. This study is going to consider the needs in the Upper Price River watershed. See, we have 3 bullets here. We want to look at the ability to increase and maintain safe and reliable water supplies for the community. That's to cover all those different uses that I talked about. We always want to encourage water conservation. And the 3rd bullet, we want to improve the water delivery efficiency. As we, this evaluation, it'll be conducted, and at the end, it'll be put together in a watershed plan and an environmental impact statement. You might hear us refer to this as a Plan-EIS, or we also may refer to it as just an EIS. Couple of the federal guidelines are shown there at the bottom of the slide. The National Environmental Policy Act, or the acronym we use is NEPA. So if you hear us say NEPA, that's what we mean, is the National Environmental Policy Act. And then also, everything will be done according to the CEQ regulations. And that's the Council on Environmental Quality. We do have a lot of acronyms in our business, so we try to explain those as best we can. Next slide, please, Mindy. The study area. Our study area is the Upper Price River Watershed. This is Carbon County. If you look there toward the upper left part of the slide, you see Schofield Reservoir, and then the river comes out of the reservoir and heads east and follows State Route 191 down through Helper, Price, and Wellington and beyond. So it's a pretty big study area. We want to look at all of the resources in this area. Here on the map, we've shown some of the land ownership. The land ownership's a combination of federally owned, state-owned, and private land as well. Next slide, please, Mindy. The purpose and needs statement essentially identifies the problem that we're trying to solve and the goals we want to address in developing solutions to that problem. Based on what we've learned so far, and we are just at the very beginning, I think Mindy mentioned this is the scoping phase. So we're at the very beginning, and what we've learned so far are some preliminary needs, and we've listed those here. We've learned that there are limited water resources, especially in the late summer. That there's a lack of facilities to be able to improve and implement more water conservation measures. Also, we need to keep in mind that there's a current need right now, and there's also a future need. Future growth is important to look at. Based on these needs, some preliminary purposes have been identified. We want to provide a clean and reliable water source for the current and future needs of Carbon County. We want to enable increased water conservation in the watershed. And part of what we're doing tonight is part of scoping. This is some of the input that we want to get from the public as well. We want to know what you think the needs are. And then we will combine that with what we already know and develop a more formal purpose and needs statement. Next slide, please. Got a list here of a lot of different types of environmental resources. These resources are both part of the natural environment and also the built environment. The first thing we're going to do is identify what resources are present in the study area. And then as we get to know what the resources are, the next step would be to estimate what the impacts or effects might be to those resources from a number of different alternatives. Not all of the resources will necessarily be present in the study area, but these are typically the ones that we see. We do want to hear from the public about any resources of special concern to you or any key information you may know about the resources. But as we get further along in the study, we will be doing more in-depth evaluations and surveys for these environmental resources. Next slide, please, Mindy. As we've mentioned, we're in the very beginning of the study. There's a lot of things that are still to come. And I really like the fact that we're involving the public early on. And we want to get the public involved and I think the mayor mentioned that we want to be transparent. We want people to know what's happening and be able to participate and be a part of this. Where we haven't looked at alternatives yet, since it's just scoping, we have already heard from some stakeholders in the public a few things that may be part of a solution. We've listed some of those here. And we've kind of categorized them as items that would help with water storage, water conservation, and the overall delivery system, or how we get the water. So this is just a very preliminary list. As we move forward, we will be looking a lot more depth at alternatives. If you notice the very bottom item on the list there, it says no action. No action is something that we do need to evaluate as well as part of this process. So as we develop the environmental impact statement, you'll be able to see a number of alternatives, and also it'll always be compared against the no action, or which means what if we do nothing? And so we will use that as a gauge as well to measure alternatives. Also want to just mention that at this point, no decisions have been made. You are getting involved here at the very beginning and will be able to be involved throughout the process. Next slide, please, Mindy. This is actually the last slide that I have, and then I will turn time back over to Mindy. But I wanted to just talk about the schedule and the NEPA process just a little bit. So our target for the schedule is 2 years. We do understand that the NEPA process, it's a process-driven schedule. So where we want to have this goal, we will let the process dictate whether we're able to go faster or slower. And if you look on the left part of the schedule, we show the 2020, and you can see the green asterisk or the green star. That is where we are now. So right now we're in the scoping phase, and we are developing the purpose and need for the project. You can see the symbols there at the bottom. There's a blue circle, and that shows where the public meetings will be. Meetings similar to this. So this is the first of 3 opportunities that we'll have to present and interact with the public as part of a public meeting. The second public meeting shows there in the early part of 2021. And that meeting, the purpose of it would be to talk about alternatives and screening. And then if you look out into 2022, you'll see that third meeting. And that is the last meeting. At that point, we have a draft of the Plan-EIS, and you'll be able to see everything that we've done and everything that we've looked at. So that's a very important meeting. All 3 of these meetings are important. And we look forward to getting everybody involved. The very last thing that will happen as part of the EIS is developing a record of decision. And the record of decision will indicate what was chosen, what was determined to be the preferred alternative, or any proposed action that we have. With that, Mindy, I would turn the time back to you. Thank you for helping me go through the slides.
Yeah, of course. So I wanted to touch a little bit on participating in the process. Yeah, we want you to know that public participation does play an important role in the NEPA process, and it helps our team. It helps guide our team in the decision-making process, not only now during scoping, but throughout the duration of the study. Keep in mind there are other factors that play a key role in determining solutions. So we've listed some of those here. Of course, engineering standards, water resources data, environmental resources impacts. That's the list that Stan kind of reviewed earlier of all those natural and human environmental resources. Economic analysis, and then coordination with key governmental and environmental agencies. So at the beginning of this process, we developed a key stakeholder list. Our public involvement team worked with the study team to develop that list. And we've already started with that initial outreach. And we'll continue developing that list and identifying key stakeholders that should be included in the process. If you found this meeting, chances are you've seen information on how to submit comments. So we are in the formal comment period for the scoping phase. So to submit official written comments, there's a few different ways. We wanted to provide a variety of ways to, give you every opportunity to provide comments. You can mail comments to this address right here. And all of this information is on our website. So know that you can reference our website later if you need to, write down this mailing address. So you can mail the actual comment form to us. It doesn't have to be on our official comment form. You could, write it down on a piece of paper. You can type up a letter and mail any of those to us. You can also, you can send an email to our study-specific email address right here, info@upperpricerivereis.com. You can visit the study website. So on our study website, there is an interactive comment map. You can go to that map and zoom in to a specific location. Maybe there's a specific area that you want to comment on. You can click on the map and it brings up a window and you type in your comment there. It does ask for your name, I think your phone number and email. But once you submit it, other people that are viewing that map can only see your comment. They won't be able to see your contact information or your name. Also on our website, you can download and print the comment form right there, and then you can mail it in. We do have an in-person location available at Price City Hall. So if you've been to Price City Hall in the past 2 weeks, maybe you've seen some of the display boards and the comment forms. So you can pick up a form there, you can fill it out there, and then drop it off at the Price City Utilities office. We have a comment box there, you can slip it in, or you can take it home with you and fill it out and mail it. Okay, and then if you have any questions about that, go ahead and submit it through the Q&A and we can respond to those questions. I do want to mention, and I'll show you later our contact information. If these options don't work for you, please call us, please email us, and let us know if we can help. We do want to give you every opportunity to provide a comment. So if these don't work, please call us and then we can help you out. Actually, let me go back to this slide. So the formal comment period for the scoping phase began on October 15th. Typically, it will last 30 days, and we will send you an email. If you're a part of our email update list, we will send you an email letting you know before that comment period closes so that you have an opportunity to provide an official comment. Although there are formal comment periods throughout the study, we want you to know you can contact us at any time. If you have questions or comments, we will bring those questions and comments to the study team. So comments during this scoping phase will help our team develop the purpose and needs. So they'll help us identify needs in the area and make sure we understand the surrounding natural and human environment. And then also comments about the public meeting or, you know, the commenting process or advertisement. Please let us know if you have comments about that. You know, how was it to join the Zoom webinar? You know, was there any difficulty? Like we want to hear that too as well. All right, how to stay informed. So I would say, first of all, we've established study-specific contact information. So we do have a phone number that rings directly to a few of our public involvement team members. So you can call us and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. You can email us. And then you can also visit our website. On the Contact Us tab, there is a form you can fill out. And also, if you want to receive email updates at key study milestones, you can use any of these methods to contact us and let us know. Okay, and we will send, the email updates will kind of come around like the public meetings and the formal comment periods, and then any other key milestones throughout the study. Okay, you know, that concludes our formal presentation portion of the meeting. We will now transition to the Q&A portion of the meeting. So we want to invite our panelists to go ahead and turn on your cameras, keep your mics muted until you're ready to respond to a question. You know, typically we would hold a meeting like this in person, where we would be like standing around a map or standing around display boards and answering your questions one-on-one or in small groups. I mean, that really is ideal. So this Q&A session, it's the online version that gives us the opportunity to dialogue with you. So, you know, we really appreciate all the questions that are coming in, and we encourage more. You know, is there any questions you have of just in general about the environmental process, about this study in general, or specifically? As we're answering questions, we will answer as completely as possible. If we didn't, please submit a follow-up question and we'll respond to that as well. All right, our Q&A moderators are Ryan Pitts, our environmental lead, and Bo Hunter, our public involvement manager. Yeah, you guys can go ahead and unmute your mics. And I know Ryan's going to give us a little more information about the scoping phase.
Thanks, Mindy. It's good to be with everyone tonight. Oh, it looks like you got it switched. Awesome. So it's good to see everyone tonight. We're happy to be here with you. We hope to be helpful during this question and answer period. We've had some great questions come in already. We've been monitoring them, and some of them that we have in the queue right now, we hope to answer as a panel or as a group, so that others who are participating will be able to hear those answers as well. I just want to remind everyone that as we enter this question and answer phase, you know, we really are at the very beginning of this study, like Mindy mentioned, and it's scoping. We are really trying to learn from each of you what we need to know in order to help inform the study. So we do have some answers. We don't have a lot of final answers, but we hope to be able to learn more from you tonight in order to help us in this process. So to get started, we have Russell with us. Russell Seeley, I want to throw a question to you first. We're glad you're here with us. We had a question come in that talked specifically about water usage and water rights, and I think that it would be good for us maybe to start talking just in general about, you know, if we have considered water rights and how they play into this, and how we are coordinating with water users and those who are irrigating and those who need water for the communities and things like that. And then Russell, maybe after you have an opportunity to share some insight, Stan, maybe you want to jump in there too and help us understand a little bit more about how water rights play into this equation as we start this EIS process?
Okay, thanks. First to talk about water rights. Obviously, water rights are very important in the state of Utah and in our area particularly. If we look at what water rights are out there, Price City has a storage right from many years back on the White River for 5,000 acre feet of water. So that storage right is the kind of the main driver, I guess, in this situation. And so that's why Price City is involved in this and is the sponsor of this funding with the NRCS. Now the 5,000 acre feet of water is storage rights. So for a reservoir, it's not direct flow rights, and it's also it also fits in the priority schedule. So it's not a high priority water right. So by using this storage right, it doesn't it cannot adversely affect anybody else's water rights. Now that's just the city's water right. There may be other water that could come into play in this situation, depending on our partnerships with irrigators and whatnot. And so that's why, leading to the second part of this question, the other water users that are involved. The committee that is kind of steering this study is made up of representatives from different areas of the community, different canal companies, different water users. And so there's a multitude of different water users represented on our committee, including the Price River Water Users Association, Carbon Canal, Price Wellington Canal, and others. So water is very important to our community, not just for the people who live here, just drinking, watering our lawns, but it's also vital for those who irrigate their farms, their ranches, their cows, and their crops.
Thanks, Russell. And I always like to hear Russell talk about water rights. He has been involved with this for quite a while, and he understands it very well. A couple of the key points that he made for me is we do need to understand the water rights to be able to do the study. And the study won't take away any water rights. We do envision partners in the canal companies and the other water users. So at this point, Ryan, what we're doing is working to really understand the water rights and who has them. So I liked Russell's answer a lot better than mine.
Hey, Stan and Russell, I kind of want to follow up on this same topic. Looking at the question and thinking back to our presentation, we did have a board that talked about revised water usage, and I think it had to do with conservation. And I feel like that question is asking specifically about that, the board and the information that we had in our presentation. Can you guys talk a little bit about what was meant by that? What are we going to do as part of this study, maybe to revise water usage guidelines?
I am just flipping through the boards. I think I know which one you're talking about that showed a number of ideas or possible components that could go together to make a solution here. As far as conservation, I think, we've indicated that there is kind of a lack of water, and especially as we look toward growth and how do we accommodate the growth and the continued use of water. Lost my train of thought, sorry. Sorry, Bo, ask that again.
Well, no, I think I know what you're saying. One of our solutions, one of the outcomes of this could be to develop some guidelines that conserve water to help with that growth. So instead of producing more water, storing more water, we could conserve some of the water we're using today.
Yes, anything we can do to save water essentially adds more water to the pot. And a lot of things can be done with conservation, but perhaps lining canals, you would save on evaporation and seepage, and just maybe coming up with more guidelines about how to use water. I know where I live, we have a pressure irrigation system that people use to water their yards. And the city sends out guidelines of, hey, if you live on this side of the road, you should water on Tuesday and Thursday. If you live on the other side, it's Monday and Wednesday. But I think as part of the study, we want to look at just good, best management practices for how do we save water.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that that again, we're not adversely affecting anybody's water right that they already have. But like Stan said, I think there's some opportunities through this project that we can better manage the water that we have. We only have a limited amount of water in our system, in our valley. If we can be more efficient with the water that we have, if we can transport that more efficiently, like Stan said, if we could pipe the canals, if we could take better care of the water that we already have, then that water could stretch much further and be better for everyone.
Okay, we've got more questions coming in. I think the next question is probably our most commonly asked question. There's two in the queue though that I want to push together, lump together. Stan, I think I'd like you to talk maybe a little about Garley Wash, but before we get to that, Russell, I'm wondering if you could do a little bit of background history, what has been done, what studies have been done, what sites maybe have looked at. And so here are the two questions just to give those to you. And so I'm hoping, Russell, this question does not directly apply to what's been done, but I think what's been done has led to these questions. And so if you could give us a history, and then Stan, if you could talk about what we'll look at in this study. So the questions are, will the study look at other locations other than Garley? And then a second question from a different participant asked, how many sites would this study look at?
Okay, so a history of how we got to here. Back several years ago, and I forget how many years ago, 2014, 2015, a bunch of water users in the community got together and said, what kind of projects can we come up with to improve the water systems delivery, water situation in our community? And we met out at the county fairgrounds, and we made a big long list of potential things to look at. And from those meetings out at the county fairgrounds, we looked at, decided to focus on a lower elevation reservoir that would be able to capture some additional water that runs past in the wintertime, as well as provide another reservoir lower that we could put all of the Schofield water in, and then deliver that to the canals from the lower elevation reservoir. So we started looking at locations for a reservoir, and just taking a slice through the community, an upper elevation and a lower elevation boundary, and then looking at different canyons and draws throughout the community. We were able to come up with a number of preliminary locations. Then we looked at sizes, again, going back to that water right from Price City was 5,000 acre feet. So we looked around 5,000 to 10,000 acre feet in size, and narrowed it down to a couple different locations, Garley Reservoir being one of those. And so because of some of the characteristics of Garley, the location close to the canals, and some of the good features of that location, that one was picked for additional studies. We were able to get some funding from the state legislature to do some more in-depth studies, including some geotechnical analyses and things like that. And those said that the site was a decent site for a reservoir. And then finally, we got to this point where in order to move forward with a project of this size, we need to do an environmental impact study. And that's where this funding came in, and that's what we're doing right now. And maybe Stan will talk more about this, but the environmental impact study or the NEPA process requires us to take a step back and say, have all of the alternatives been considered? And that's where we're starting tonight. What do we need to accomplish? What are the needs and purposes of this? So we need to step back and say, do we really even need a reservoir? Is there something else that we could do that would solve the same problems? And then if we decide, yeah, a reservoir is a good option, then we need to look at other locations and give other locations a fair shake and say, well, did we pick the right location? Or do we need to look for another location? And what are the pros and cons of the other locations? And go through a very elaborate process and evaluate each of these sites.
Thanks, Russell. Just to add to that, Bo, I wanted to touch kind of on the part of your question about what are we going to do next. I do know that Garley Wash has been an idea of, hey, we could maybe put a reservoir there. And I think that is something we will look at, but we will also look at other locations as well and be able to weigh the pros and cons and be able to determine what we think the impacts would be. Russell mentioned that there have been a number of studies already done. And that information, we don't want to discount it or disqualify it. What we want to do is validate and verify where we can, and then continue to gain more information. In the EIS, here as we get into early next year, we'll be talking a lot more about alternatives. And we'll have another public meeting similar to this to be able to discuss with the public ideas we have and alternatives and gain more input from the public about other ideas. I envision, we showed the slide that listed a lot of different potential improvements just based on what we have heard so far. And I see the alternatives development, Bo, involving multiple pieces of that. And so as we develop alternatives that'll be thoroughly evaluated in the EIS, they could have maybe a storage component to it, maybe a conservation component. But Bo, we've mentioned we're just in scoping, we're at the very beginning. And there will be a time period that we want to solicit a lot more input from the public about alternatives. So.
And just to add to that scoping piece, Ryan talked about it, you just alluded to it. If you have ideas, now's the time to send them in. If you have a thought of something that we could do, something we should evaluate, investigate, send us your ideas. That's what scoping's for. What good ideas are out there? We have some. I read a comment came in through our email about 2 potential sites that we should evaluate. And so I think that's really our call tonight. Our call to action is send us your ideas, send us your thoughts. Let us know what you think we should evaluate and look at. We'll take all these ideas like Stan talked about and start refining them down. And maybe the solution, that we come to towards the end of the study in a couple of years is a compilation of a lot of different ideas. It won't just necessarily be one slam dunk solution. There'll be components that come to that. But I think right now during scoping, just the call to action is send us your ideas. We'd love to hear from you, and any ideas we can get will help the study move forward.
We do have another question that has come in that's specific to Garley, but we may be able to answer it in more of a broad terms, simply because right now we just don't have any kind of final design or plans of what the solution is. But this question says, how many acre feet of water does the current location and design for the Garley Canyon Reservoir contain? And I know that preliminary studies have been done, but I know also that there's no final design. There is no finite number. But if we were to do some sort of storage component to help resolve the purpose and need, what could a reservoir be? What kind of size would be adequate based on the water right that the city has? Russell, do you have any thoughts on that, on maybe what that size could be if a storage component were to be a part of the solution?
So yes, if we look at Garley, and the question that was asked, how much water is the current design for? Again, there's no final design. We just have some preliminary potential ideas. So Garley Reservoir at the most can hold about 10,000 acre feet, which is a substantial amount of water. Again, we don't have the water rights for 10,000 acre feet. We only have water rights for 5. So we would have to find another 5,000 acre feet to get to the 10,000 acre foot level. But that's just part of the process. So we could, through this process, decide that 10,000 acre feet is more than what we need and that we could get by with something smaller, something on the order of 5,000 acre feet, something on the order of 2,000 or 3,000 acre feet. In my opinion, could still solve a lot of the problems and really benefit the community. And so that is one of the issues that we need to look at as part of the study and consider, and that could change the size of a potential reservoir.
Okay, thanks, Russell. We have 2 questions that have come in, submitted by the same individual. I think I want to try to lump them together. And Norm and Derek, I think maybe these are NRCS, and I hope others will weigh in on them. One of the questions is about how much does a dam leak? And then the follow-up question, or the one I want to pair with that is, is there any consideration taken to building a dam close to a residential area? And I think maybe if we could talk about both of those, do we consider the location and its proximity to residences, and then also how much does a dam leak? And my guess is that's probably highly geotechnical, but hoping maybe one or both of you could weigh in on this.
I can try a little bit here, Bo. As far as earthen built dams, all dams really, they do leak. That's just part of the natural condition of building a structure. So it just depends on what the foundation is that it's built on, how much that leakage is, and what we need to control. And so there's various engineering techniques, geotechnical type techniques that can help mitigate that leakage and keep it safe.
Residential component, how do you consider that in the development of alternatives? And I don't know, Stan, if that's maybe something you would weigh in on as well, or Derek or Norm. Do we consider that? Is that factored in? Would we try to look at something that may be further away from a residential area? I know there's dams all over the state that are in close proximity. If they're not, they're above, and if they were to breach or something, you would have runoff to residential areas. What kind of consideration goes in for that?
I can weigh in a little bit on that. Yeah, that is all a part of our planning process and looking at those alternatives and locating a structure that has storage behind it. And the engineering team will be looking at that and looking at the sizing of whatever is proposed as far as the amount of storage that's there. We have a requirement with state dam safety and also NRCS engineering standards. We have to do some modeling, and if there was a catastrophic event, an earthquake, a catastrophic breach of the structure, we have to be able to know what will happen downstream. What is, what is that flow? Where does it go in the valley down below? And then if there are some things that we can do to help mitigate that potential risk, it's a low risk, but it's still there because we are building something that wasn't there with nature. So all of that will be looked at with the planning team very carefully, and those models will be generated and evaluated.
Just to add to that, Norm, I think you're talking about that breach inundation analysis, and that is definitely something that we will need to look at as part of the study.
I think too, I want to add in that, as this study progresses over the next couple of years, that we're going to want to work very closely with anybody that could potentially be impacted, either a direct impact or an indirect impact like we're talking about here. And so tonight's not the first time that we can or should be talking about this. As it evolves and we evaluate different alternatives, we certainly want to be working with the neighborhood in question here. Stephanie's provided more information as far as proximity potentially to the dam where the homes are, also that the homes were there first. We recognize that, and Norm, you alluded to the fact that it's low risk, but it's also something that's man-made, and we want to make sure that we're trying to account for that. And so certainly we want to get in with this neighborhood. If it wasn't during COVID, we probably would have been having in-person neighborhood meetings already, and maybe we should set up a Zoom meeting with that neighborhood in the near future to talk about their concerns and to talk more about the study. But certainly now's the time to bring up those concerns and questions and issues. And again, if you have ideas of things that we can do, other suggestions, please send them to us. We're very open and very interested. And there's some questions in the queue that are about other potential sites as well that I think we should talk about.
Yeah, I wanted to address one of the questions that we have in the queue, and that is, and maybe Mayor or Miles, maybe you two could help us understand this question a little bit better. The question is has Willow Creek been considered for? Are either of you familiar as to whether or not that location has been considered, and has it been evaluated?
I can honestly say no. I know that was one of the questions that came to me early on in this process. As we looked at Garley Reservoir, these other alternatives were looked at, but not really studied from my knowledge. And maybe Russell could tell you, but I don't know of any. But that's the other part of this, is that a committee, we formed this committee to look at all those different issues that I was being asked. And so the committee is trying to put together what would be the best place, and is Willow Creek a good place?
Well, and Ryan, I think I would just add to that, as we said, we are at the very beginning. We're just in the scoping phase. We haven't really been soliciting input yet on alternatives. I think if people want to provide input on that as part of this meeting, that's great. And like Bo said, we want to know all of your input and concerns and ideas and suggestions, but I see that being a big part of that next public meeting to really dig in deep for the alternatives. So, but please, everybody, send any input you have to us. Thank you.
Let me just add a couple things to that. And I think that we can absolutely consider Willow Creek as we move forward with this EIS. I think originally that Willow Creek was kind of tossed out, mainly because the water right that we're looking at, the Price City water right, comes from the White River, which goes into the Price River, which is in a different drainage than Willow Creek. So we don't have a water right on the Willow Creek drainage. Now, we could look at putting something in Willow Creek and piping the water over there, which I think is what we should consider with part of this EIS. But I think originally that's why the Willow Creek was tossed out.
Yeah, we got another question about Garley and silt in the Price River. Norm, I'm hoping you're the guy to answer this, but I'm not positive. I think we should answer this more in relation to any location, because I think we would consider silt, and they're wondering, you know, how we would consider that, what would the current plan be, and would there be any kind of mitigations like settling basins or other methods to prevent silt buildup in a new reservoir?
Yeah, that's a really good question. On any structure that's being built, especially in Utah, and especially in the Mancos Shale and out in that area, sediment is a big question and a big consideration for the engineering team and sizing the structure, because we have to have a certain percentage that is allotted to that sediment collection in a pool or a reservoir of a structure, and that really ties back to how long the dam can last. So if you end up with a dam or a structure that it fills up quicker than what you expect, then we don't want that either. So all of that will be carefully looked at and modeled, and to determine what that sediment yield rate is to a structure, and that'll all be considered during, with the design concept, if that's what we do.
And I just add to that, ultimately that sediment yield may lead to exploring other reservoir locations just to minimize that yield coming into the reservoir. So it's just something else to consider as we develop the alternatives.
We have a few more questions in the queue. We may be able to get, it would be nice if we could get through them. So I want to throw this other one out. The question asks about if a reservoir is selected as part of the preferred alternative, would there be recreational component added to that? And I know that we're really early in this process and we don't know that, but it would be something I know that we would consider. And I don't know if someone in the team would like to talk about that a little bit more.
Sure, Ryan, I'll address that. Great question. And again, we are in the scoping phase, but as we develop the purpose and need for the EIS, if we find that recreation is desired by the community, it certainly is one of the authorized purposes under this PL 566 watershed program. Some of the examples of recreational opportunities include trail systems, boat ramps, picnic facilities, camping facilities. But again, I think it's very important for the public to let us know at this point if a reservoir option was to be on the table, what would they use it for? Would they want a water ski on it? Would they want it to be only open for non-motorized boating? Would they want to use it for birding? Where do they currently go to recreate on open water environments? So again, the program does support recreational components. However, the program and the flagship is driven around many other purposes, and the recreational amenities kind of piggyback on some of the larger measures that are captured in the plan.
We are at time. There are 2 questions still in the queue. I think we should answer them. Take a few minutes and go through these. I think they're great questions. Hopefully our participants can be patient and are willing to stay on for a few more minutes. We are recording this. We will post it to our website. The next question is about funding. Where would the funding come from to construct a reservoir, and would property tax increase be an option to help pay for that? And I'm not sure who to send that to, but where would funding come from?
I can chime in on that, Bo. As far as NRCS, we are funding the planning and the design and the construction if it gets to that point. And so for the planning, we pay 100% of all the work and design work that's part of the project. And then when we get to the implementation phase, and if it does happen to be a dam type structure, then that dam, I mean, it'll depend on what purpose that it's assigned to. So for if it's ag water management, then NRCS, based on the policy for the program, we can pay up to 75% of the construction of that dam or that structure. And then if recreation was a part of that storage, you know, that is also another allocation in the cost table when it gets to that point. So all of that, all those costs would be weighted and summed then to get to a final cost, if that helps. But I guess in a nutshell, NRCS will help with that funding and with the PO 566 program based on the purpose of the dam. So if it was solely for flood control, for instance, and Derek mentioned the flagship purpose really is flood control. That's why Congress originally set this up for. That's 100%. So if you need a structure that to protect the community from flooding, and you've had damages historically, and we have done thousands of those dams around the country with the program. So if it is for flood control, then we pay 100% of everything. So, but if it is for ag water management, then it's 75%.
Yeah, and I'll jump in there real quick. You know, as part of the Plan-EIS process, there's a very robust economic analysis. And within that analysis, it will be very clear on what monies will be NRCS construction monies and what, you know, what pot of money the sponsor will be required to eventually come up with. We do have time on our hands, and a lot of times these sponsors are using this planning effort to reach out to other entities to secure some funding to help with their match requirements for any of the cost share for the construction side of things.
Dan and Derek, will we, you know, you mentioned economic analysis, will we provide kind of a cost estimate or something at the end of the study? Will there be something that goes out to the public that shows kind of what we're planning, what the estimate is to construct it?
Absolutely. There's an entire chapter dedicated to the preferred alternative, and there's very extensive economic tables, and it's very clear on who's responsible for what monies at what phase. Again, there's a final design phase that follows our planning phase, and then there's a final construction phase, Bo. But yes, it is very clear to the sponsor or the sponsors, because many times we have multiple sponsors that are going to be contributing money towards construction. It'll specifically break out who's responsible for what percentage and to help out during construction.
Thanks, Derek and Norm. We've got a question in the queue we'd like to get to here really quickly. This question is probably to you, Russell. You mentioned at the very beginning of our Q&A that Price City has some water rights for storage. And the question is, you know, is this water right being used elsewhere, or is it not being used at all?
So this water right is not being used at all right now. Back in the day, and I don't know what year this water right was applied for, but this is a water rights type question. When you want water, you go to the state of Utah and say, I would like a water right. And so Price City went to the state many years ago and said, we would like a storage water right on the White River up near the summit. And the state said, yes, you can have a water right, and you have X number of years to build a reservoir and prove that water right. And obviously that reservoir never got built, but the city still has that water right. And the city still needs to prove that water right. And so there's a process involved in that. And obviously it's, we're not looking at the White River, although we can consider that in this EIS. But we would need to go to the state to change that water right to the location, whether that's the White River or Garley or Willow Creek or wherever, and say, would we want to move this water right to this location, and then we can start using it.
Thank you for being patient with us. We're well past the time. Really appreciate you joining us tonight. If we didn't answer your questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We have a hotline, email, we have a website. We want to talk to you. Duke, myself, Peter, we've been trying to answer some questions behind the scenes. If you feel like we didn't get to your answer, please reach out to us, send us an email, call us. We'll either answer your question or we'll connect you with one of the experts on our team. Again, this is the first of many conversations that are going to be had, first of many public meetings that we're going to have. And we're just excited to get started on this and to work with you and to get your input during the scoping phase. So thank you very much.